Welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of my 2021 DNF series. So without further ado, let's continue on from where we left off. Then I also DNF'd the Aquitaine Progression by Robert Ludlum. Now, I cut my teeth on Robert Ludlum when I was a young man. In my teens and 20s, I read a lot of Ludlum. And for whatever reason back in the day, I found him great and I loved him. And Page Turner's wonderful spycraft, like just amazing books. As I got older and went to try to go back and read him, he's, again, very overheated, very overdramatic, a lot of italics, a lot of characters, just doing a lot of double takes like you're in a black and white movie from the 20s. So I wanted to go back and try to read one of the books. I probably read everything that he wrote up till The Apocalypse Watch, which was when... I think that was maybe in the mid 80s, late 80s, all his 70s stuff. Like I devoured him when I was a young man. But I couldn't do it. And it's funny that one of the reasons was part of the plot is this lawyer is hired to go find these 4 generals are coming back and they're going to, take over the world in some crazy way, as only Ludlum characters can do. But part of it is they hire this lawyer to go find these guys and try to figure out what they're doing. And a lot of the beginning of the book are these long chapters on the history of these generals. And again, as I'm reading it, with Ludlum, I'm like, yeah, this doesn't feel real. It just felt like Ludlum's like, I'm going to spin you these incredible detailed careers, 4 of them. From different parts of the world. And I think when I was a younger reader, I was overawed by that. Like, wow, this guy's from Spain and he went here and he did this. But now it just felt like way too much storm and stress, man. Like a lot of, it just didn't feel real. And his characters are never much to write home about. So yeah, I bought a bunch of Ludlum. I love these mass market paperback versions. So I have almost all of his 70s books in this same cover with the spirals coming out. They're all very similar. I want to go back and reread. The Mattery Circle was one of my favorite. The Born Identity was great. The Icarus Agenda. Like, they're good plots. And he does his research. So the Spycraft is great. Like, I am a Ludlum fan. But it's harder and harder to get past the prose and the italics these days. But anyway, so there was that. So next book up was a book called Brother Termite by Patricia Anthony. And I had originally read... Cold Allies, which was her first book, which was kind of Tom Clancy light, if you will. But the world is at war, and aliens are arriving. Strange, but secretly, not kind of overtly. So there's not like an overt alien presence. And Cold Fire was really great. I liked it a lot. Not very good on character, Patricia Anthony, but she was good on military hardware, and the plot was very interesting. One character was in a bunker piloting a remote drone, but the drone was a land drone, so kind of like a bot. So you had these people, in this area and what they were seeing in the war zone, and then these mysterious lights were dropping and they were finding them. And then you had tank commanders in Eastern Europe fighting tank wars, which was very Tom Clancy-ish. So Cold Allies I liked a lot. This one, aliens have come down, they're in government, so I think one of the aliens is president at the moment. I'd read that James Cameron, when it first was published, I think this was published in the 80s, but James Cameron was a huge fan and he had optioned it and he was going to make a movie about it. Obviously did not. But I started to read it, and it's very much takes place in Washington, D.C. You're politicking with the president and his advisors, and it's mostly from the alien point of view. Versus that they're running the world. Not badly, it's not a takeover kind of thing. It's that they've come and just integrated and risen to places of power. But it was dead boring. It was really boring, and the characters were not interesting, and the alien culture was not interesting. It just found like there were just large chapters of, the book telling me that they were aliens, but they just could have been politicians talking with a little alien gloss on them. So yeah, I was disappointed because I thought maybe I would get back to her after all these years and read more of her work, but I don't think so. So that was Brother Termite. I also DNF'd Tad Williams' City of Golden Shadow, which is the first book in his Otherland quartet. And I have I have a strange relationship with Ted Williams. When I was in my 20s, I read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and I was working in a bookstore when the third book came out, and I remember getting it. It was so big that the book itself would sag on the bookshelf, like it couldn't hold it. And I really liked Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. A little long-winded. I felt the Dragonbone share was a little too long, and I've never gone back to read it because it's just a lot of words. Ted Williams puts a lot of words in his books. I will say that. But I remember reading the first book of Otherland, maybe in my 30s or early 40s, and thinking it was dynamite. Really, just an amazing setup and world, and then quickly souring on book 2. So I thought, okay, this is, I get so inspired when I see, 4 big books on a shelf. It's the author just created this whole world. Like, I just want to go in and mainline it, So I'm like, let me go back and read. And my problem with Ted Williams is that he overwrites. And he's not that, I think more and more that I read, I'm less interested in his writing. There are just passages and passages and passages of description and incidental character interactions that have nothing to do with the story or are belaboring the story. And he does it a lot. And I think what happened is in the second book, he set up a very intense action sequence where it was kind of like a Indiana Jones thing. The setup basically is Otherland is these rich guys create this virtual world that's, that you can't really distinguish it from the real world when you jack in. It's incredible. And, they're doing something to children. I forget what it was, but they're putting children to sleep in comas because there's some part of that helps fuel this thing. It's a little creepy, but not creepy in that, the author's creepy, but it's a cool, creepy kind of setup. So our characters, the whole first book, all this unfolds, and then all the disparate characters come together. And by the second book now, they're all in Otherland and trapped there. They can't jack back out, so they have to quest their way through it, which is, what better plot is there, right? But I remember in the second book, they get there and they're about to go on this quest. They have to get something from this pyramid, and I'm like, oh, this is him doing King Solomon's Mines, right? So he kind of pastiches, and because it's a set of worlds, you can do whatever you want. So I think Ted Williams was like, oh, this will be great. I can do a King Solomon's Mines. I can do with this. I can do with that. But it very much felt like that, and so I wasn't. There was a lot of, this is kind of like Stephen King. There's a long sections of digressions into action sequences or adventures that don't have any stakes in the story, or they don't have any stakes for the character. And you're just like, I feel like the author's saying like, this is gonna be a fun ride, and I'm gonna take you on. And I think, for some readers, it is a fun ride. They don't care that it's not maybe part of the story. But with Ted Williams, I guess I can't do it. And he'll spend enormous amounts of time, putting you through an adventure, and they'll come out the other side. And it really didn't do anything to the story or the characters. And I remember skimming through the rest of the books when I got frustrated with it. And I thought, this is just bloated. This could be cut down. What a great idea. It's very bloated. So yeah, unfortunately, it's like I want to read these things. I want to like it. I want to say I've read Otherland and it was incredible, but I can't wade through all of his paragraphs. So yeah, I DNF'd it. All right, so we're down to the last 2. Second to last was Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This was a gift by a good friend of mine who did a little research and found that it's very well regarded. And it had been kind of on my radar as well. He's kind of a new space opera guy. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, let's check him out. And I did 200 pages of Children of Time. Like, I got pretty far in. And it's a fascinating story of, generation ships and new colonies and evolution. I mean, an entire planet begins to evolve based on an accident that happened. Really amazing world building and amazing, very Clarkian in a lot of ways, which I love Arthur C. Clarke. But I think at the 200 mark, the characters did not really come alive for me. And I kind of saw what was going to happen. Sometimes you get a sense of what's going to happen in a book. And I realized I should be excited and eager for that thing to happen. And I think, well, okay, I'm not, I kind of know how these two sets of people are going to come together. I kind of know what's going to happen on the planet. Maybe I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I kind of know the next chunk of the book and how the author has to get certain things to certain places. And I was like, I'm not interested in reading anymore. He's a good writer. And I think, I don't have any knocks against him as a writer. I think he's really good. It's like, he reminds me of Peter F. Hamilton, who, again, he's another writer I want to like, but who often belabors the point and overwrites a lot of incidental stuff in his stories that, I don't know, maybe if I was a younger, or I was just more in tune to science fiction in general and really, really, just give me any sci-fi, I might like every picture that these writers show me. But I think at this point in my reading life, I need a little more. I need some character. I need a good plot that moves. And character mostly. I think genre obviously suffers to me from character. And so, yeah, so he's a good writer. And if you like space opera, I would say go ahead and recommend it. But it didn't land with me. But there's a lot of good stuff in that book. So my last and final DNF, the one I'm most guilty about, Middlemarch by Marianne Evans, or as she was forced to become known as, George Eliot. I think there's a movement now starting to rebrand a lot of these classics of female authors who had to change their name, otherwise they wouldn't get published, which I think is awesome. So George Eliot, whose name was Marianne Evans. So yeah, Middlemarch has been on my list for a long time. I have been, big monster tomes are magnets. I don't know why. Like, I really don't know why, but they just are. So this was one of them, and I got 300 pages in to what is about almost an 800-page novel, and I stopped. A couple of reasons. The first one is that there's a style of writing that she has. I don't see her world very clearly. Somebody like Tolstoy will do, high up kind of Victorian musing type of writing, but then he'll describe something so incredibly in such a tactile way that it'll pop out of the scene. So when you read Tolstoy, the world comes alive. Same with Dickens. Dickens does the same thing. His worlds come alive around you, which is why I think his books remain to this day. She doesn't do that. She writes with a style where she's much more interested. I mean, she's interested in her characters, but it's a very telling style, and it's not a very showing style. And look, if you're a genius, you can get away with that. And there are, people love this book, so obviously she gets away with it. But I just found that after a while, the world wasn't coming alive. I felt like I was living in the head of Marianne Evans, not so much being Marianne Evans putting me in the world of her book, right? Subtle difference, but it's powerful enough. It's a great story, in that you find Dorothea Brooke, who's the main character, very religiously and very intensely spiritual, and winds up marrying this guy who you as the reader and everyone around you realize is not right for her, much older, but she's so impressed with his, seemingly spiritual mane that he puts on that, she's like, I'm worthless and you're living the right spiritual life. And as you go, you're realizing that inside that she's so full of life. She's a wonderful character. Like, she really is. She's so full of life. And this guy inside is like a dead, musty mausoleum. It's all external show that there's nothing inside. And as she starts to recognize that, and not soon after she starts to recognize that is when I lost interest. Because a lot of the other characters around her kind of blended together. I didn't jive with them very much. And just, it just got very samey. And, she didn't burn as brightly as I wanted her to. That would have kept me reading. However, she's no joke. Like, this is an incredible writer. I wanted to read one piece of this because I did underline a good deal of this book. There's some beautiful writing in here. There's also a lot of very pedestrian writing in here, which I think there's more of that than beautiful writing. But when she wants to really turn it on, she can. So in this instance, the character is in Rome walking around looking at sculptures, and she's such kind of a museum geek as a character too, that she's so, and the guy she's with could care less. The husband, he's like in their apartments in Rome, I think, working. He's creating this great work that like some theological treatise, right? And that's all he does. He spend hours and hours with these dusty books, and she's out wandering around Rome by herself, which is kind of tragic when you read it. You're just like, oh, this poor woman. Is she gonna figure this guy out, you know? But so here's a scene where she sees some sculptures and some ruins, and how she feels about them. So she goes, ruins and basilicas, palaces and colossi, set in the midst of a sordid present, where all that was living and warm-blooded seemed sunk in the deep degeneracy of a superstition divorced from reverence. The dimmer but yet eager titanic life, gazing and struggling on walls and ceilings, the long vistas of white forms whose marble eyes seemed to hold the monotonous light of an alien world. All this vast wreck of ambitious ideals, sensuous and spiritual, mixed confusedly with the signs of breathing forgetfulness and degradation, at first jarred her as with an electric shock, and then urged themselves on her with that ache belonging to a glut of confused ideas which check the flow of emotion. I mean, wow, that's my jam, you know. So there's some great stuff in here, but there's an enormous amount of pedestrian writing that surrounds this. And again, it's of a very even measured tone that I never feel I'm punching through in and out of her world and getting a red-bloodedness out of it. Although, you know, now that I just read that, I'm like, maybe I should try to finish it. But anyway, I think I kind of have to believe 300 pages into a book, 300 pages into a 700er, I think if I didn't finish it, I'm not going to finish it. So anyway, that was my most guilty pleasure. So that ends the second part of my 2021 DNF book tag. Again, I want to reiterate that I tagged Revenant Reads, Michael K. Vaughan, and The Rambling Raconteur in my book tag. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.